40%. That is the number. Statistics confirm that 4 out of every 10 long-term marriages reach a point of total, absolute emotional disconnection. You likely assume you know the cause. You think it is a lack of time, a shift in priorities, or perhaps the slow erosion of shared interests. You are wrong. This is not about the visible friction of daily life or the common arguments that fill a household. There's something deeper, something buried beneath the surface of a seemingly stable life. When two people stop connecting, the silence is not a void. It is a deliberate construction. It is a wall built brick by brick, often without the primary partner ever noticing the foundation being laid. If you believe your relationship is immune to this shift, you are already standing on the edge of the very reality you refuse to acknowledge. The question is no longer whether it can happen to you. The question is, if it is happening right now, would you even have the tools to recognize the signs before the distance becomes permanent? Why does this happen? The answer is not what you think, and it is far more calculated than you have ever dared to imagine. Stop looking for the obvious culprits. You are searching for signs of infidelity, financial stress, or dramatic confrontations, but those are merely symptoms, not the disease. The real failure of a marriage is not a sudden explosion. It is a quiet, systematic withdrawal. You have been conditioned to believe that love is a constant, a baseline that persists unless actively destroyed by external forces. That is a comforting lie. In reality, the architecture of a marriage is fragile, and it is often dismantled from the inside by the very person you trust the most. You think you know your partner. You think you can read the subtle shifts in her tone or the way she avoids your gaze. But what if your perception is not a reflection of her reality, but a projection of your own desire for stability? The truth is, you are not observing her. You are observing the version of her that she allows you to see. This is the provocation. You are living in a house where the locks have been changed, and you are still using your old key. The danger is not that she will leave. The danger is that she has already checked out while you continue to play the role. To understand why this happens, you must abandon the idea of malice. It is not a calculated strike against your happiness. It is a fundamental function of the human brain known as compartmentalization. Imagine the mind as a series of sealed rooms. In one room, she maintains the life you share, the routines, the conversations, and the expectations of your marriage. In another, she creates a separate space for needs, thoughts, and identities that your primary relationship simply does not accommodate. This is not a choice made in the heat of passion or a momentary lapse in judgment. It is a systematic, often subconscious strategy for survival. When a person feels that their internal landscape is being stifled or that their growth is hitting a ceiling, the brain creates a partition. It allows her to function as your partner while simultaneously nurturing a completely different version of herself elsewhere. You see a unified person, but you are only interacting with one side of a much larger, more complex structure. Now, we must move beyond simple psychology into the cold, hard mechanics of evolutionary biology. This is where the dual mating strategy theory enters the frame. It posits that throughout history, females have developed a subconscious mechanism to optimize genetic and resource security. It is not a conscious plot. It is an ancient, hardwired directive. The theory suggests that the brain seeks two distinct categories of input: the primary partner, who provides stability, resources, and social standing, and the secondary target, who provides the genetic or psychological stimulation that the primary partner lacks. When these two needs are not met by the same individual, the brain does not necessarily force a choice. Instead, it creates a dual-track system. One track ensures the longevity of the domestic environment, while the other tracks the pursuit of unmet biological or psychological imperatives. You are likely viewing your marriage through the lens of a social contract, expecting mutual exclusivity as a default. But biology does not care about your vows. This internal partitioning creates a profound shift in the daily rhythm of your relationship. As she builds these separate mental spaces, the primary partner begins to experience a subtle, persistent exclusion. You might notice that while she is physically present, her attention is often elsewhere. She is not merely distracted, she is actively inhabiting a different mental geography. This private brain is where she processes the needs that you do not satisfy. It acts as a sanctuary, a place where she can explore, validate, and nurture parts of herself that remain untouched by your shared life. Over time, this creates a growing chasm. You ask a question, and you receive an answer that feels rehearsed or hollow. You share a moment, and you sense that she is observing it from a distance. The more she invests in these private mental rooms, the less energy she has to allocate to the primary relationship. You are not being ignored, you are being bypassed. The brain is quite efficient at this, learning to toggle between the domestic role and the private identity with increasing ease. This is the moment when the primary partner realizes that the person they know is only a fraction of the whole. You are left on the outside of a door that you did not even know was being locked. How does she reconcile this duality without collapsing under the weight of guilt? The answer lies in the internal logic of self-preservation. She does not view her compartmentalization as a betrayal, she views it as a necessary survival mechanism. In her mind, the primary relationship has become a static container, unable to hold the full spectrum of her evolving identity. Therefore, she justifies the creation of these hidden spaces as a way to protect her own sanity. She tells herself that by keeping these needs separate, she is actually shielding the marriage from unnecessary friction. She convinces herself that you would not understand, or worse, that you would try to dismantle the very parts of her that she has worked so hard to cultivate. This is the invisible wall rising. It is built brick by brick with a mortar of rationalization. Every time she withholds a thought, she reinforces the belief that her secrecy is a virtue. She is not living a lie, she is living two separate truths, and she has convinced herself that this is the only way to remain whole. The wall is not just a barrier, it is a fortress of logic that she has fortified against your intrusion. You are standing on the outside, watching a structure grow that you are fundamentally forbidden to enter. Now, the fortress of logic moves into the physical world. You see it first in the way she handles her phone. It is not just a tool for communication, it is the primary gateway to her hidden digital identity. Watch the screen. If it is always face down, if it is never left unattended even for a moment, you are not witnessing a preference for privacy. You are witnessing the maintenance of a separate life. Every notification that lights up the screen is a signal from that private geography. She does not reach for the device to check the time or scroll through social media. She reaches for it to manage the connection to her other truth. When you enter the room, notice the shift. The device is angled away, or it is slid into a pocket with a speed that suggests reflex. This is not about hiding a specific message. It is about protecting the existence of the digital space itself. She has curated a version of herself. The phone has become an extension of the wall. Every time she turns that screen face down, she is closing the door on you once again. The digital barrier is merely the start. Look closer at the quiet, mundane moments of your shared day. Observe the way she occupies space when you are both in the same room. She is physically present, yet her attention is tethered to a frequency you cannot hear. She might offer a nod or a brief response, but her eyes remain fixed on a point just past your shoulder. This is the withdrawal of presence. Notice how she adjusts her schedule to create gaps where she is unreachable. She leaves earlier for errands that take longer than they should. She lingers in the car after returning home, staring at the dashboard before she finally kills the engine. These are not random lapses in time. They are deliberate pockets of autonomy. She has begun to curate her silence, turning it into a tool to manage your expectations. When you speak, she listens with a measured, practiced patience that feels hollow. She is no longer engaging with you. She is monitoring the interaction. She is not just living in your house, she is living in a parallel reality. You are left to observe the shell of a routine that has been hollowed out from within. The realization does not arrive with a shout. It arrives in the silence of a kitchen at midnight, or the stillness of a hallway when you realize the person walking beside you is a stranger. You are no longer sharing a life, you are sharing a roof. That is the pivot point. Everything you thought was a foundation is revealed as a facade. She is not just keeping secrets, she is maintaining an entire, fully realized existence that functions perfectly well without your input. Think about the energy required to sustain that. She wakes up, she moves through the house, she interacts with you, all while navigating a complex set of rules. The betrayal is not a single event. It is the persistent, daily act of living a double life in the same room where you sleep. When you touch her arm, you are touching the surface of a person who is mentally miles away, residing in a geography of her own making. The shock is the sheer scale of the architecture she built to keep you out. You finally understand. The person you wake up to is merely a shadow. She is not merely hiding facts. She is managing two distinct versions of reality. This is the core of cognitive dissonance. Her brain must constantly switch between the persona she presents to you and the one she inhabits elsewhere. Watch her closely when you ask a simple, direct question about her day. She pauses. That fraction of a second is not hesitation, it is a calculation. She is selecting the version of the truth that will not trigger your suspicion. This mental labor is exhausting. Over time, it erodes the common language you once shared. You speak of the future, of bills, of the mundane reality of your household, but she is translating your words through a filter that does not exist for you. The result is a profound, growing disconnect. You ask for a response, and she gives you a performance. The friction between these two truths creates a static that fills the room. The dissonance becomes a wall, thick and impenetrable, silencing the truth until even the simplest sentence loses all meaning. The language of your partnership has finally died. It did not end with a dramatic argument or a final confrontation. It ended in the quiet, suffocating space where words no longer carry weight. When you speak now, the sound waves hit a wall. She looks at you, but the eyes do not register the meaning of your sentences. They are merely observing the movement of your lips, waiting for the noise to stop so she can return to her own internal sanctuary. This is the peak of the void. You are sitting at the same table, breathing the same air, yet you are separated by an ocean of unstated truths. The silence is no longer peaceful. It is heavy, dense, and absolute. You try to bridge the gap with a question, a plea, or a simple observation, but the response is a hollow nod or a vacant stare. She has retreated so far into her separate reality that she is no longer reachable. You are effectively alone in a crowded room. The isolation is total. You realize that even if you were to scream the truth, it would not penetrate the barrier she has constructed. You are two ghosts haunting the same house, trapped in a state of profound emotional exile where the concept of us has been erased, leaving only the cold, hard reality of two people who have nothing left to say to one another. Consider the weight of the mask she wears. It is not merely a choice. It is a relentless, exhausting performance that never pauses. Inside her mind, she is constantly reconciling two incompatible versions of her own existence. She moves through your home, performing the role of the partner you expect, while her thoughts remain anchored in that other, hidden space. This is not just deception, it is a fractured state of being. She carries the memory of two different lives, each demanding a unique set of responses. The internal friction is constant. It manifests as a low-level, chronic tension that never dissipates, even in sleep. Every gesture she makes toward you is a calculated effort to maintain the illusion, while every moment of solitude is spent navigating the complexities. She is not living a life, she is managing a crisis of identity that she alone can see. The tragedy lies in the fact that she has become a stranger to herself. She is caught in a cycle of self-erasure, trapped in a labyrinth of her own making, waiting for a resolution that she is too terrified to initiate. The psychological architecture is now too brittle to sustain the weight of the performance. Every day, the internal friction grows, turning the act of living into a high-stakes calculation. It is no longer a matter of if the structure will fail, but when. The collapse begins with a simple, mundane error. Perhaps a notification pings at the wrong moment, or a name slips out in a casual conversation. It is a minor, trivial slip, but in a system built on total compartmentalization, it is the crack that shatters the glass. You see the immediate, visceral change in her. The mask does not just slide, it disintegrates. The calm, practiced exterior gives way to a frantic, uncoordinated scramble to reassemble the pieces. She is no longer managing a secret. She is fighting a losing battle against the reality she tried to bury. The mental energy required to maintain the duality is suddenly redirected into a desperate, chaotic attempt to salvage the illusion. You watch the color drain from her face. As the realization hits, the game is over. The friction has reached a point of no return. There is no more room for excuses, no more space for the performance. The air in the room has changed. It is no longer thick with the tension of secrets, but thin with the cold reality of exposure. The masks have fallen. There is no more performance to maintain, no more script to follow. You stand in the wreckage of a shared history that was never truly shared. Look at her now. The person you see is not the partner you built a life with, but a stranger who has been hiding in plain sight. She is not crying, and she is not apologizing. She is simply present, stripped of the layers of deception. The projection of your marriage, the stability, the shared goals, has evaporated. You are left with the jagged edges. Every memory you hold now undergoes a violent revision. You realize the conversations were hollow, the intimacy was a performance. The two separate lives have collapsed into a single, undeniable point of failure. There is no path back to the illusion. The bridge is burned, not just damaged, not just smoldering, but entirely gone. You might find yourself reaching for the old patterns, searching for the familiar comfort of the lie, but that door is locked from the other side. You cannot unknow what has been laid bare. The gravity of this moment is absolute. It is the final, sharp realization that the before state is a ghost, a construct that never had the substance to survive the light of truth. Do not mistake this for a temporary crisis. This is a permanent shift in the landscape of your life. You are standing at the edge of a precipice, and the choice is no longer about saving the relationship. It is about surviving the impact of reality. The air is cold because the illusions that kept you warm have been stripped away. You are breathless, not from the shock of the discovery, but from the weight of the clarity that follows. There is no going back to the ease of ignorance. You are awake now, and the world looks different because you are finally seeing it without the filter of your own expectations. Stop the interrogation. Every question you ask now is a desperate attempt to find logic in a system designed to exclude you. You are looking for a confession, a reason, or an apology, but you are only feeding the cycle of your own frustration. The truth is not hidden in her words. It is written in the patterns of her withdrawal. Look at the distance she creates. Notice the specific time she disconnects, the way her attention drifts, and the physical space she puts between you. These are not accidents. They are the observable data points of a life being lived elsewhere. Stop asking for explanations. Instead, step back. Become a silent observer of the reality unfolding in front of you. Watch the phone usage, the sudden shifts in mood. By removing your emotional investment from the inquiry, you gain the ability to see the architecture of her behavior. Observe the patterns, document the disconnect, and prepare yourself for the cold, hard conclusion that follows. Now that you have the data, you must confront the only question that matters. Are your boundaries being respected? You have spent too long measuring her behavior against your own capacity for forgiveness. That ends now. A boundary is not a suggestion you whisper into the void. It is a line in the sand that defines your worth. If she ignores the line, she is not just testing your patience, she is testing your commitment to your own existence. Stop waiting for her to change the rules of the game. You are the one who decides what is acceptable. If the current dynamic requires you to shrink, to silence your intuition, or to accept a secondary position, the boundary has been violated. You are not a victim of her choices. You are the architect of your own environment. Reclaim your agency. The power to change your reality begins the moment you decide that your peace is more valuable than her validation. The secret you have been chasing is not a hidden truth about her. It is not a revelation about the nature of marriage or the complexities of female psychology. The true secret is far more uncomfortable. It is the realization that you have been the silent architect of your own compromise. You looked for the secret in her phone, her silences, and her inconsistencies, hoping to find a villain to blame for your dissatisfaction. But the secret is that you are the one responsible for the standards you allowed to be dismantled. Every time you ignored a red flag to keep the peace, you were teaching her exactly how much you were willing to lose. Every time you accepted a half-truth because the full truth was too heavy, you were setting the ceiling for your own dignity. This is not a condemnation. It is a liberation. When you stop viewing yourself as a victim of her hidden life, you reclaim the power to define your own existence. You are not a bystander to your own relationship. You are the final arbiter of what you will tolerate. The secret is not the act itself. It is the mirror it holds up to your own lack of conviction. Now that you see the architecture, the responsibility shifts to your hands. The information is now yours. You cannot unsee the patterns, nor can you pretend the architecture of your life is invisible. The weight of this knowledge is not a burden, it is a tool. You have moved past the need for answers from her, because you have finally found the truth within yourself. The cycle of questioning, searching, and doubting ends here. You stand at a threshold. Behind you lies the confusion of the past, the half-truths, and the compromises. Ahead lies a reality defined entirely by your own terms. You know the mechanics of the deception. You know the cost of your silence. You know the price of your dignity. There is no more room for hesitation, and there is no more room for excuses. The mirror has been held up, and the reflection is clear. The only remaining variable is your next move. The silence that follows this realization is the most important part of your journey. Listen to it. Embrace the clarity it brings. What will you do now that you know?